Hi all, welcome to another session of the Environmental Studies classes. In this session, we'll be dealing about biodiversity and its conservation, as well as biodiversity pattern and global biodiversity hotspot. Learning objectives of this session is to understand or know about biodiversity and its conservation, to know the different levels of biodiversity, to know about biodiversity patterns, as well as to know about the global biodiversity hotspot. After this session, you'll get to know what is biodiversity, its conservation, then the levels of biodiversity, the biodiversity pattern, as well as about global biodiversity hotspots. Over to the session. So first we are going to look into what is biodiversity and its conservation measures. Biodiversity. So what is biodiversity? Bio means living and diversity means variety. So according to the definition that is given here, variability among living organisms from all sources including terrestrial, marine and other aquatic system and ecological complexes of which they are part of. It is nothing but a variety of living organisms of this world or of a particular habitat is called as biodiversity. So when we need to look into the levels of biodiversity. The levels of biodiversity includes genetic level, species level, as well as ecosystem level of biodiversity. When we talk about genetic level of biodiversity, it is nothing but the genes within the same species show variation. So the example given here is the example of a rose. Even though when we say rose, there are different varieties of rose, isn't it? Red rose, white rose, yellow rose, etc. So that is the genetic variability of biodiversity. When we talk about species variability of biodiversity, it represents the species and richness, abundance in a community. So the number of plants, the number of animals in a particular area, you can see a different varieties of species of plants and animals in a particular area. So that is another level of biodiversity. When we talk about ecosystem, it is the diversity in complex system. An example is diversity in forest, wherein which a lot many species interaction and interdependence forms that particular uh, ecosystem, wherein which there is a lot many divergence or variations in each species, or in all together we can see it as an ecosystem. So these are the three levels of biodiversity. When we look a little more in depth about the levels of biodiversity, when we talk about genetic diversity is the measure of all genetic differences between plants and animals. So if here it is an examples of breeding of cattle. So breeding of cattle, you might have heard about Gir, then Red Sindhi, then Suhiwal. All these are different varieties of cattle wherein which it shows genetic diversity. So why is this important? It is to ensure that these breeding programs remain viable in the future also. So in order to monitor this genetic diversity, there is genetic diversity, there is breeding of different forms of cattle. Okay, now when we talk about the species diversity, we can see species diversity differing from area to area, to be specific from geographical different location to location. So we can see that the diversity of species is more in the tropical areas than the polar region or the desert region. Why? Because of course in the tropical regions they have an environment, they have a surrounding, they have a temperature, humidity, all those things will be in ambient condition. Whereas when we go to the polar region or to the desert regions, there the conditions are extreme, where only a particular set of organisms or organism plants or animals are adaptable to it. Not all can withstand those or withstand or live in those areas. So that is why there is species diversity also. When we talk about ecosystem diversity, all ecosystem is under pressure. So all ecosystem is under pressure in the sense to maintain that ecosystem. uh, it is to maintain that ecosystem, there should be an interaction as well as an interdependency relation shown among the organism itself. So when there is a lot many stress or strain affected in that ecosystem, it affects the balance of the ecosystem, wherein which in turn it affects the biodiversity of that particular ecosystem. So that is why there is ecosystem diversity in terms of biodiversity. Now when we talk about the values of biodiversity, so when we talk about the values of biodiversity, it can be direct values as well as it has indirect values. Direct values include the consumption value and the productive value, whereas the indirect value include the social, cultural, ethnic values, aesthetic value, option value, environmental service value. These all things we'll be looking into in the further slides. So now let's look into the consumptive value of biodiversity. Well, the consumptive value means the non-market value of the resources. That means the non-market value of the biodiversity product, which can be harvested and consumed directly without going into the market. These are its consumptive value, which includes fuels, food, drugs, all these things. There are fuels, food, drugs, and all which can be directly harvested and consumed without actually going into the market. So this is the consumptive value of biodiversity. So when we talk about food, 80% of edible plant species are there in a biodiversity area. About 90% of the present day food crops have been domesticated from wild animals. A large number of wild animals are also source of food. When we talk about drugs and medicines also, it is extracted from plants and plant extract. Examples are isgol, then penicillin, tetracycline. When we talk about fuel, of course, big source of fuel is wood, which we can directly get from the biodiverse areas. So firewood collected by individual are of direct consumptive value. Next, when we talk about productive values, they are commercially usable values where the product is marketed and sold. That is, mainly the industries are dependent on the productive value of diversity. That is, uh, products like silk, wool, musk perfumes, and all which we get from the biodiversity, like the musk deers, the silkworms, and from the sheeps and all, we get the products which is then marketed and sold in the uh, into the commercial state. So this is how the biodiversity on productive value it is useful to the economy. And moreover, when there is excessive consumption, or when there is excessive demand of certain products, it becomes those products or those species become into endangered species. So smuggling, so the other problem arises due to excessive consumption is the smuggling of fur, husk, tusk, etc. As there is increase in demand, there is increase in exploitation of these products, which is then again illegally sold. When we next when we talk about the social values, the values associated with the social life, customs, religion, psycho-spiritual aspects of people. So we can say it, even today, many plants as well as animals are considered to be holy and sacred, wherein which it includes tulasi, mango, peepal. Then when it comes to animals, it includes cow, bull, snakes. And these values are passed down to the generation through the dances, songs, and customs. So in that way, that is where the social value of biodiversity lies. When we talk about the ethnical value of biodiversity. It is also known as existential value. If we want our human race to survive, then we must protect all the biodiversity, because biodiversity are valuable. Once if something is being extinct, there is no going back and bringing it back. It is not possible. Once extinct is extinct. So before such uh, problematic situation appears, it is our duty to preserve it. All life must be preserved based on the live and let live, live and let live. This means that we don't use species directly or indirectly, but we feel sorry for the loss of species. Till date, more than millions of species are, at the verge of being extinct. So this is, of course, directly or indirectly, we humans are involved in their extinction. Next, when we talk about the aesthetic value, it is related to the beauty of biodiversity. So, of course, everyone likes to visit area where there is a beauty. We are not interested to visit areas where there is a monotonous or barren land. No, when we see a beauty, we are more attracted to go there and visit it. That is why the concepts of ecotourism are now being created, wherein which individual can go and visit and enjoy the aesthetic beauty of nature. So now when we talk about the optional values of biodiversity suggest that only species may prove to be, some or the other day some species may prove to be a miracle. That means there are still species to be discovered. There are a lot many unknown species to be discovered as well as to be explored. So some or the other day each species will be a miracle to us. This biological resource will be important in future, not today. So as it is stated in the example, the marine animals can act as an anti-cancerous drug in the future, which is yet to be, those fields are yet to be explored. When we talk about the ecosystem value, it refers to the ecosystem services. It is a non-consumptive value. That is, it refers to the services provided by the ecosystem, like it provides, provides and it prevents soil erosion, it prevents flood, then it maintains the soil fertility, and also it helps in the nutrient cycling and so on. So there is a long list of the ecosystem values of biodiversity. Now, the next aspect that we should be looking into is the biodiversity conservation. As we now know, what is biodiversity? Biodiversity is nothing but a variety of plants or animal species in the earth or in a habitat. So when there is a variety or richness of biodiversity, the threat is also more. So we need to conserve it. So there are two approaches to conserve biodiversity are, one is in situ and the other one is ex situ. That is what we are going to look into. So in this figure, it shows the biodiversity conservation, the measures, the approaches, where in which it includes the in situ as well as the ex situ. In situ means uh, uh, inside a place. Ex situ means outside its natural habitat, we can say. So in situ, it includes protected areas, national parks, and uh, bioreserves, wherein which the protected area includes sanctuaries and the bioreserve includes terrestrial bioreserves and marine bioreserves. When we talk about ex situ, it includes the seed bank, the crypto preservation. Crypto preservation is nothing but the process of preserving cells, organelles, or any biological uh, component by cooling them at a very low temperature. So that is one of cryopreservation. Then field gene banks, sacred plants, home gardens, then arboreta. Arboreta is nothing but a botanical collection of large trees species, and botanical garden, zoological park, aquaria. So all these are ex situ type of biodiversity conservation. So this is the here it is a list where in which how many national parks, how many sanctuary wildlife sanctuaries, reserves are there. So according to the statistics, there are almost 102 national parks in India, 515 wildlife sanctuaries, 47 conservation reserves, 4 community reserves, 39 tiger reserves, 28 to 32 elephant reserves, then 17 biosphere reserves. So this is the data that is presently there. When we talk about the policies of biodiversity conservation, it is important to raise the public participation for the analysis of impact of various developmental projects on the environment. So it is very important because us humans are the main role playing characters in this biodiversity. So it is important that we participate in various developmental projects of the environment. The next aspect is to explore the importance of sustainable utilization of bioresources among the local communities. So for their basic needs, local communities or anyone depend on biodiversity. So we must make them aware about the sustainable uses of these resources so that it can be used for the future. Then to identify and track the important part of biodiversity that requires urgent conservation measures. So policies should be issued in those areas where there is urgent need to protect that biodiversity area, because it is those areas is at the risk of being extinct. So protected areas must be established. Then we need to check an introduction of alien species, especially in biodiversity hotspot area. So when alien species are introduced, it must be introduced in such a way that it doesn't affect the uh, sustainability of the native organism that is present there, and it should be maintained. There must be a balance. The alien species shouldn't be over dominating the native species, which can in turn affect the biodiversity, the natural habitat biodiversity of that particular area. Then the policies for biodiversity conservation include to explore general awareness among the importance of biodiversity. So it is our duty to explore and to give awareness about the importance and the impact of biodiversity. Now, let's look into endemism. Endemism is a state of species being in a single geographical area, like a particular island, in particular country, or in a particular nation, etc. So that is what is called endemism. So as it is found in only in a particular geographical location, the threats to these type of species is also very high. So it is very important that these species must be protected, because as I stated earlier, once a species is being lost, there is no going back and bringing it again. So when we talk about the global diversity, currently about 1.9 million species are known. That means there are still more species which is yet to be discovered and yet to be known. So these are the data which is being given. That is almost 30 million insects are there, 5 to 10 million bacteria, 1.5 million fungi, and 1 million mites, 3,21,212 plants, 13,67,555 animals, which includes vertebrates and non-vertebrates. So the list goes on. So this is how diverse our world is, our earth is. So when we talk about the biodiversity at national level, that is our India. India is one of the 12 mega diversity countries in the world. 2.4% of the land area accounting for 7 to 8% species of the world. So in total, when we take the total world species population among 7 to 8% of species diversity seen in India. It is India is 10th among the plant-rich countries, 11th in the number of endemic species of higher vertebrates, 6th in terms of centers of uh, diversity. And again, Ministry of the Environmental and Forest Records gives us the data that 47,000 plants accounts to 7% of the global, which is seen in India, and also 91 species of mammals are also seen in India, which accounts to 6.5% of the total global mammal species. And there are almost 5,000 flowering plants, 340 coral reefs seen in India. So now let us look into the biodiversity at regional or local level. So this type of biodiversity can be categorized in richness of four types based on the spatial distribution. So when we talk about on the base of it, it is point richness, alpha richness, beta richness, and gamma richness. So point richness is nothing but the species that are found at one single point. When we talk about alpha richness, the alpha richness is the species diversity or species richness in an ecosystem. It is in a small scale measure. When we talk about beta, it refers to the species diversity between two ecosystem or community. Here, we can say the measurement is in large scale and a large scale. And when we talk about gamma, it describes about the biodiversity in large geographical areas. So this is how on the basis of richness it is divided into. Next, when we talk about hotspots, a biodiversity hotspot is biogeographical region with significant reservoirs of biodiversity that is under the threat from humans. So these hotspot areas are highly threatened areas by humans. So that is why they are preserved and kept, we can say. Areas which exhibit high species richness as well as endemism are termed as hotspots of biodiversity. So that is what is called hotspots of biodiversity. 25 hotspots were identified, out of which 2 were in India. Later, 9 were added more, which is bringing now to 34 hotspots all around the world. About 40% of the terrestrial and 25% of the vertebrate are endemic found in these hotspots. After tropical rainforest, the second highest number of endemic species are found in Mediterranean. These hotspots are threatened by human activities. More than 1 billion people, most of whom are desperately poor people, live in these hotspot areas. Measures of protecting these areas should be planned because these areas are highly under the threat from human beings. So this image shows the hotspot regions across the globe. The red and pink colored are the ones which indicates the biodiversity hotspot across the globe. So this is the list of hotspot, as it is said earlier. Almost 34 hotspots are there across the globe, and among these 34, 3 are from India and surrounding areas, wherein which it includes Indo-Burma, Western Ghats, and Eastern Himalayas. 3 are hotspot located in India itself. So when we talk about the Eastern Himalayas, in the image, it is showing how the Eastern Himalayas are located. And here 35,000 recorded flora is endemic to Himalaya. Flora in the sense the plant species are endemic to Himalayas. 4,250 species in Sikkim, of which 60% are in endemic. So you can see how threatened the species of this area is. And a parasitic angiosperm called Sapria himalayana, which is seen in this Eastern Himalayas, is confined to this areas is also under threat. It is only seen in last 40 in last 70 years, twice in last 70 years. When we talk about the Western Ghats extends in Maharashtra, Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, and almost 17,000 square kilometers strip of forest is what the area coverage of the Western Ghats. In this Western Ghat itself, 40% is the 40% is endemic plants, 62 percentage is covered by amphibians, and 50% is lizards. So the Silent Valley, the New Ambalam, and the Agastamalai Hills are all the reserve basins that are seen in Western Ghats. You can see these Western Ghats is under alarming threat. So it is very important that that is why they are termed in the category of hotspots. There is at the near future, if you do not protect them at the correct or in a proper manner, all the species, there is chances that all these species can lead to extinction. And the Indo-Burma, it is since it is seen, it is located in the states of Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Meghalaya, Nagaland, South Assam. So it is one of the most densely forested regions of the country. Among 13,500 species of plants, out of which 7,000 are already in the endemic state. And there are 1,000 to 60 species of birds, 430 mammals, among which a uh, large population of them is in the endemic state. So here also it shows how much threatened that biodiversity region is. So that is why it is in the hotspot category. So it is our duty to create awareness among the people and to make sure to protect all these biodiversity. As I have repeatedly said it before also, once lost cannot be regained back. So whatever we have now is only if we preserve and consume it appropriately, then only it will be left for the future, or else it won't be there in the future, wherein which it will have an adverse effect to the future generation. So keeping all this in mind, I hope you have understood whatever was taught in this session. Thank you and have a nice day.